Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Matt Jarbo. Welcome back to Three Buck Theater. Today we're going to be talking about King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, and that it was initially intended to be the beginning of a shared universe. Now, Heroic Hollywood has a story here saying that Warner Brothers' King Arthur, Legend of the Sword will be the latest depiction of the fabled British ruler, and while producer and writer Lionel Wingram may have been hoping for a hit worthy of a franchise, only time will tell how audiences will respond to the film. In an interview with Collider, he revealed that King Arthur, Legend of the Sword was originally intended to be the beginning of a shared cinematic universe within the world of Camelot, saying here, "I think that we will go off in our own directions, but hopefully with a nod or a wink to those original stories. There's certain things that we're based on, so for example, a guy called Joby Harold, who was a person who came up with the original idea for this particular franchise, and his idea was to have separate origin stories for King Arthur, Lancelot, Merlin. I don't think we're quite going that way. As things change, we'll see what happens. We're making the first movie, but if we do get lucky enough to do more, it will be slightly different than that. It will be the same idea to give everyone their separate journey, and in the course of the movie we meet our main characters in a slightly different way from the original story, and hopefully it will reinvent them in a fun way." And that's an interesting concept, right? That's a very interesting concept for having a shared universe of King Arthur. But it's also not like, it's funny because they're kind of writing this article now, February 23rd, as if it's like this new thing. But I came across this article on thefilmstage.com from back in 2014, so almost 3 years ago, saying Guy Ritchie to kick off a new adaptation of King Arthur with Joby Harold's screenplay, indeed beginning of a story that, if all goes well, will receive 5 follow-ups. So they had originally intended this for a 6-picture franchise. Now, when I first read it, it was like 6 or 7 films. They were going to give Lancelot, Guinevere, Merlin, give them kind of origin movies and lead them into this big shared cinematic thing. Because at the time in 2014, it wasn't just King Arthur that was being touted around as a shared universe. We're talking fucking Robin Hood was being touted around by Sony. There's like 2 Robin Hood franchises being developed right now, and one of them was through Sony, and I think the other, I want to say, is probably through Warner's. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but definitely one of them was through Sony, and they wanted to give that like a big, I think it was like the Sherwood series or something is kind of what they were hinting at. But having a King Arthur interconnected shared universe is a really interesting concept, because looking at the general story here, because this is like the plot line of the movie down here, it says the young Arthur runs the passages of Londinium with his crew, not knowing his royal lineage until he grabs Excalibur. Instantly confronted by the sword's influence, Arthur is forced to make up his mind, joining the rebellion and an enigmatic young woman named Guinevere. He must learn to address her and eventually understand her magic weapon, deal with his demons, and unite the people to defeat Vortigern, a man who murdered his parents and stole his crown to become king. So again, they're kind of playing off of the original story, and I guarantee you this movie is not going to like, and it's not going to like be the one thing. It's not a one-hit film. It's going to be like Robin Hood with fucking Russell Crowe from 2010. I cannot believe that movie is almost 7 years old. But that was also meant to be the start of a Robin Hood franchise, because at the end of that movie, spoiler alert if you haven't already seen it, he ends up in Nottingham Forest. Or in Sherwood Forest, in Nottingham, with his band of merry men, right? Like at that point taking on the sheriff. And so that is essentially what they were trying to do with that movie, but it failed to connect. And so that was 2010, right? That was 2010. Not at the time, all we had for in terms of interconnected universes like that was just Iron Man 2. I mean, literally Iron Man 2 opened like 2 weeks prior to Robin Hood. So it was also that notion of like, okay, like they weren't too sure what to do at the time. Now, I'm really wondering what's going to happen with King Arthur, because the story there is very fascinating. You could look at the movie of Excalibur, and you could probably expand the King Arthur story outward, right? You could expand it out. Because jumping over here to Wikipedia, you can take a look at this here saying, although the themes, events, and characters of the Arthurian legend varied widely from text to text, there is no one canonical version. Geoffrey's version of events often served as a starting point for later stories. Geoffrey depicted Arthur as a king of Britain who defeated the Saxons and established empire over Britain, Ireland, Iceland, Norway, and Gaul. Many elements and incidents are now part of the integral part of the Arthurian story appear in Geoffrey's Historia, including Arthur's father, Uther Pendragon, the wizard Merlin, Arthur's wife Guinevere, the sword Excalibur, Arthur's conception at Tintagel, his final battle against Mordred at Calmon, the final rest in Avalon, right? So there's all of these elements of the story that can be pulled from here that can really add into it here. Also, the 12th century French writer Crétin de I'm saying that totally wrong, who added Lancelot and the Holy Grail to the story, began the genre of the Arthurian romance that became a significant standard of medieval literature. In these French stories, the narrative focus often shifts from King Arthur himself to other characters, such as various Knights of the Round Table. Arthurian literature thrived during the Middle Ages, but waned in the centuries that followed until it experienced a major resurgence in the 19th century. In the 21st century, the legend lives on, not only in literature, but adaptations of theater, film, television, comics, and other media, right? So, our story of Arthur, but you've got all of these other elements. Like Merlin could use definitely his own probably origin movie, and then Lancelot probably could as well. Like there was the oh god, what was the movie with Sean King and Richard Gere? Was that like there's that movie, right? Lancelot and Guinevere. I mean, like there's going to be betrayal, and that could be leading into the battle, into the final battle against Mordred. Like they're going to have to try to make this thing expand out movie after movie after movie. And of course, they could treat it very similar to they could do King Arthur, the Legend of the Sword. That's the first one, right? That's summer 2017. And then they could go, okay, we're doing King Arthur 2, right? Knights of the Round Table or whatever the fuck in like 2019 or 2020. And then they go, okay, we're going to do a Merlin movie, and then a Lancelot movie in between there to kind of like lead into that, similar to like the build up to the Avengers. And then just have King Arthur 2 just be called Knights of the Round Table. And then it's them fighting against, Arthur's like half sister or whatever the fuck it is, or the one, Ava Green's character from the Camelot show that was on Stars. That was actually really good. So there's all the different elements they could pull from there. And it looks like in the trailers for this movie, they're also playing with the fantastical, the mystical, the magical side. So that will then open up a whole heap load more stories they could tell, or elements of stories they could tell. And I'm wondering if at some extent what they're going to do is they're going to try to look at what happened with Snow. Like, okay, what I want them to do is I want them to look at Snow White and the Huntsman, right? And then Huntsman Winter's War, and realize why that shit fucking tanked. All right, like Snow White and the Huntsman was a good movie outside of Kristen Stewart. She was horrible for the role. She should have never been in it. But the fantastical elements that were created to fill in the gaps of the story were interesting, were really cool. And they tried translating that over to a sequel, but it was a sequel that no one asked for because there was no setup for anything going forward. And even the sequel was really a prequel, and it's a whole fucking mess of shit. It was a whole mess of shit. Nobody wanted to fucking see it. And so this one, what they should do, if this was me, I would set it up to where at the end of the movie, Arthur defeats the dude who killed his dad, takes over Camelot, and then but then they set up like his sister or whoever the fuck it was, or whoever his next villain is, as like an invading army from like another country. And then they have to like, okay, now we're preparing for another battle. This is an oncoming thing. So they have to set the table, or, set the lineage of events happening, and then go from there. So that's what I would do. But I'm curious to know what you guys think. Do you think that King Arthur should just be a standalone movie, have a beginning, middle, end, not set up for the future, just so they don't have to then try to like shoehorn something later on or make you feel like you're missing out on a complete story? Do you think that they should just go balls deep and give this thing the 5-6 movies that they originally planned and go from there? Or should they just not even worry about this shit anymore and focus on making actual good movies? These are things I want to know, so go ahead and write them down in the comments. My name is Matt Jarbo. I'll talk to you guys later. If you haven't already, please thumbs up the video, subscribe to the channel, check back often for more movie content from me, and I'll see you guys later. Have yourself a great day. Peace out.